Mindsetters, welcome to today's Grade 10 Life Sciences show. Today we have a special revision lesson on structure and support in animals. We have selected highlights from lessons shown earlier in the term to help you revise. Please post your comments and questions on our Facebook page on facebook.com/learnextra or on Twitter @learnextra so we can help you with your revision. You can also download the notes for today's show from learn.mindset.co.za or click on the link on our Facebook page. Now it's time to get on with today's lesson.
When we look at, let me see if I can extend the page there. What we are looking at in the last part of your section, all right, you are going to look at a section called the history of life on Earth, all right? So what we're basically looking at here, this is what we call a geological time scale. In other words, if I have to look here, it's basically a timeline, and you will learn that the Earth is approximately 6.5 billion years old, all right? And what that means is, if we look over here, it gives us a time scale, and what it shows us, don't worry too much about all these different names and everything, but what it does is shows us when certain, all right, organisms, certain animals, yes, plants are in here as well, but we're going to concentrate obviously for now on the animals, when certain animals started to appear and when they started to disappear, okay? If we look right here, this is the oldest. If we have a look at the bottom, I'm going to, let's see over here. This era over here, right, Cambrian, this is the oldest, all right? So these are the oldest, I'm not going to say living because they're not. When we look at the history of life, all right, we realize that when we look at fossil evidence and those kind of things, again, things you're going to look at later, we're going to find that certain organisms, all right, when we look at the evidence, we see that certain organisms we don't find today, but we find traces of them, all right, in fossils, etc. And from that, we can almost, it's the words is inference, infer certain things about the animals of that time. Now, what I'm trying to get at in a very long-winded way, it seems, all right, is if we have a look over here, you're going to find, I think there we go, all right, so I just put a line through it. You're going to find the word skeletal. So in the beginning, now what you're going to notice is a skeleton, a skeletal system, is anything, all right, that will support, protect, and help with the movement of an organism, okay? All multicellular organisms have some kind of skeleton, okay? So what do we need? We need something to protect. We need something to support, because the more cells I have, the more shape I'm going to have, and I need that shape to be supported. Otherwise, it would just be a blob of jelly, just all creeping around the ground, and not going to be very attractive. Okay, so we need to have that support system. That is going to be your skeletal systems. What we notice when we look at the time scale, evolution from time, we notice that in the beginning, right, the organisms, the very first organisms that we saw, lived in water, right? And that water itself is going to provide a support system for those organisms, okay? So now in water, the water helps you guys, those of you who, I'm sure you've all gone for a swim or whatever, water supports. You can float in the pool, you can run, you can jump, you always feel so more energetic because water is there to help support you, okay? But as we can see, right, if we follow certain trends, we're going to see that organisms developed on land as well. So from the water to the land. Now that we are on land, we have a few problems. One, well, there's no water to support us. So we have to have different support systems. Number two, all right, we have this problem called desiccation, drying out. I'm on land now, right, not in water. Because there's no water, I need to overcome. I need something. I need to stop drying out because my body needs water, all my cells need water, and I can't lose this water. So I need to have this framework, this protection, where it stops me from losing water. Okay? And also when we got onto land, the animals started, well, so we're going to use animals, the organisms started to get bigger. And with an increase in size, right, become a greater need for these support systems. Okay, so that's just looking at basically from an evolutionary point of view. Okay, now let's have a look at the 3 different types of skeletons that we're going to look at. Right, number 1, and the word, right, the type of skeleton, the word, right, gives you a clue, an idea to what the kind of the skeletal system is about. Okay, our first one is hydrostatic, all right? Hydro is obviously going to mean water. So when we come to these organisms, right, they are reliant on water for their support, so they either need to live in water, right, or they need to live very close or in a moist environment so that they can retain the water. They can't live in very dry areas. Okay, so let's have a look. When you do this, you need to know, you'll see I've put it in table form in the notes as well. A description, so what each, all right, what each skeleton looks like. Okay, examples, you need to be able to give examples of different kinds of animals that have that kind of skeleton. And then very important, each skeleton has advantages, all right, what makes that skeleton better, but on the other hand, it also has disadvantages. What makes that skeletal system, all right, what makes it not as easy or targets for other organisms. Okay, let's start with the hydrostatic skeleton. Let's look at the pictures first. I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom. Oopsie. All right. If we have a look at the pictures, we will notice already what kind. When we talk about a hydrostatic skeleton, it's soft. Water is going to be the support system. So these organisms are soft and squishy. That's the only words I can use, all right? This here you would recognize as a jellyfish. Okay, have a look here. You can't see any kind of bones or hard substances, right? All these tissues inside here, right, are going to be filled. They're all filled with water. There's a water, it lives in water, all right? And if you look at all these structures, they're pretty small. They're not very large, all right? But quite small, because that's one limiting factor. Water is the, all right, the main concept that's going to keep them, that give them support. Also, if you will notice, they don't have too many internal organs. So protection is not, because they don't have, all right, as many complex internal organs, they don't need to be protected as much, okay? So here I have a jellyfish. Here it's not the fish. I put Nemo in there because that is a sea anemone. All right? I think I spelled it wrong. It looks like, oh, here we go. Oh, me and my dots. Okay, all right. It looks like almost like a plant-like thing, but it's not. The sea anemone is an animal, all right? It's a basic animal. It's what we call the filter feeder, and water just flows in, and it gets all its food, and it flows out, all right? But it does obviously needs to have a support system. Okay, the one that doesn't live in water but does need a very dry back is here. Okay, all right, we get rid of that. I'm sure you all recognize that, all right? As a little boy or whatever, I'm sure you've all gone digging for worms. Is your common earthworm, all right? Is your earthworm. I'm sure those of you who've by mistake squished it or whatever, it's going to be very, very squishy, all right, if you've gone fishing and you've used it. Okay, so if we look at all 3 of them, they're all reliant on water in one way or another. Let's have a look at the description. All right, okay. When we look at the description, again, what we said It's soft. It's got a jelly-filled cavity, right? Jelly is not a hard substance, right? So because of that, we're going to have very few organs that we need to protect, okay? Now, when we're starting to look at animals need to move, right? Animals need to move. And in order for them to do that, muscles need to do the work. Now, here, when it comes to, right, muscles usually need to be attached to something that's hard, right? They need to, the insertion where they join, right, the attachment is usually much better if it's to a hard surface. So here we have a bit of a problem because we don't have anything solid to attach it to, all right? So you'll find that they almost move, they still move. One of the characteristics of the animal kingdom is movement, right? But here you're going to find that they are not overly active. Movement is quite limited, and how it moves is muscles. There is muscle, right? But it's just going to be in little segments. So certain muscles, right, can work at each time. None of the muscles, right, can be attached to any hard surface because there isn't any, okay? So there we say cushions the internal organs from shock. Yes, they do things. It's like a pregnant woman, all right? They have all that amniotic fluid inside. That's what the fluid does. It's a shock absorber. Remember, they still need to have protection. Okay, examples I've shown you, all right, the different kinds of examples. What are the advantages? The advantages are they are very simple, and that is an advantage. Because they are very simple, they don't need all these complex systems, as you're going to see. They don't have a gaseous exchange system. They don't have all these different skeletal framework. It doesn't have a cardiovascular system. It doesn't have a respiratory system. So because of that, all right, things are kept simple, and that is an advantage to it, all right? Doesn't have all of these complex things. It doesn't need them, all right? It doesn't need them. They are very simple organisms, but there are disadvantages. If we have a look at the disadvantages, as I said, they are small. They're not very large, right? But here, restricted to water, they have, remember, what is their skeleton? It's water. If they're not in water, they're going to dry out. Does not provide a large degree of protection. Yes, it's soft, right? The harder the protection, obviously, the harder the skeletal system, the more protection it's going to offer. And here, there are no hard parts, right? So they are obviously more vulnerable. And the last one here, as I said to you, because they don't have that great degree of muscle movement, they don't have a lot of movement. Earthworms basically can just cringe and whatnot. The sea anemones float. The jellyfish, yes, it swims, but it's a simple movement. It can't do anything fast, running, walking, turning, or anything like that. Question number 1.1 is easy, all right? All it wants you to do is identify the different kinds of skeletons. So you have the choice of, now I put this in here because this is a turtle. And the turtle actually has two. It's got a shell on the outside, and it's part of the reptile, all right? So what does it have? It will have an internal as well. So both the turtle and its little cousin, the tortoise, all right, they can have an exo and an endo, all right? Here's my bird. Bird has an inside. Here's a bee. The bee is part of the insect. That will be on the outside, so it has an exoskeleton. My frog, right, has inside, it's part of my vertebrates, so that has an endo. Right, my crab, we know, nice and hard, that has an exoskeleton. My jellyfish, right, has a hydrostatic skeleton. And my pet dog over here has an endoskeleton. All right, all nice and easy. Now we get to the more difficult ones. Over here, this next question is asking you to compare. When you compare, the easiest way to do it, and much more marking friendlier way, and usually for your exams as well, when you get used to it for matric, when they ask you to compare, they are actually asking you to tabulate it. So get into the habit of tabulating, all right? So if I were to tabulate, what am I asked to do? I'm asked to compare the movement of the bee to that of the bird. All right, so this is what I do. Okay, I need to do the bee and I need to do the bird. What am I actually asking? The bee is an exoskeleton and my bird is an endoskeleton. That's what I'm asking. So here, I put another column here. I want number A. So now, how does the bee and the bird, how do they compare? What's their mode, all right, of transport? So they're going to have the same, both of them, all right? Both of them fly. All right, the bird has a bit more. The bird can walk, all right, or it can hop. So there's a little bit more, all right, the method. Most, as I said, they have in common, they fly. Now number B. Okay, adaptations. How are their limbs adapted to their, all right, their mode? So here, what are we going to have over here for the bees? We're going to have wings. All right, what are they? They're light. Okay, where we go over here, our bird. We also have wings. But because of that, what we're going to find here, what happens here? Muscles. Right? In the endoskeleton, if we look at the bird, and you should know because you eat chicken licken or Kentucky Fried Chicken, you're eating the bird's muscles. Right? That's what you're eating when you eat chicken. Okay? So when the muscle attachment, we're going to find here the wings, all right, of my bee aren't made of muscle. Whereas my wings of my bird, because you need to think about this, okay? The wings of my bird, all right, attached muscles, all right, that are also attached to bone. But obviously, that we can do just now. Okay, adaptions of lungs. So it's light, right? And here we're going to see it needs to be quite strong. Also, if you think carefully, you will also know that the bones of birds are hollow. All right, and because they are hollow, that makes them much lighter, so they are able to fly. So you need to think for this kind of question. Question number C, types and attachment of muscles. Where will the muscles be attached here? The muscles are attached directly to the, let me extend, to the exoskeleton. Okay, and here it would be a leathery one. All right, so if I were to draw a picture, there's your outside, your muscles would all be directly, all right, joined over here. Okay, whereas if we look at the bird, all right, the bird, the muscles are attached to the bone. All right, and because of that, all right, we are then able to have much greater movement.
Okay guys, I hope you are enjoying this revision session. If you need help, remember to post on the page or send an email to helpdesk@learnextra.co.za. Now it's time to take a quick break, but don't go away, we'll be right back. Welcome back guys, we have some great news to pass on to you. We will be bringing you winter school from the 30th of June till the 20th of July, starting at 10 a.m. every weekday. To get the full schedule, visit our website learn.mindset.co.za and look for the winter school link. Join us, it's going to be a lot of fun. But now it's time to get back to the lesson.
All right, I'm sure you are all familiar. Let's extend. You're all familiar when we say the human skeleton, right? Lots of you have a picture that comes to mind, right? When we look at the bones, humans have approximately 206 bones in their body, all right? And you guys are going to learn nearly all of them, but my classes always go, you're kidding, ma'am. And then you say, you know, remember you've got 2 arms and how many fingers do you have? So that's one name for all of those, and it's not actually as bad as it is, okay? Last week when we looked at the different kinds of skeletons, right, we said there was an exoskeleton where the skeleton was on the outside of the body, like our insects, right, our spiders, our snails, right, and then we also looked at hydrostatic skeletons. Those were the animals. Remember, we did the sea anemone, the octopus, the jellyfish, all right, and we said that those and the earthworm have water, right, gives them support. We, all right, humans and most mammals have an internal skeleton, right? It's on the inside of our body, endoskeleton. Now, next week we're going to actually look at the structure of the bones, all right? So today we're just going to look at the names, all right, of the different bones that are going to make up the skeleton. When we look at the skeleton, right, remember right from the beginning when we looked at bone tissue, right? Bone tissue was different in that when we looked at bone tissue, remember the matrix. I always say like the background. When we did bone, all right, I always say when we look at the cell, you can get jelly, all right, you can get something hard like bone, or you can get something fluid like blood. And bone is the one that has to be hard. So everything that dissolves in blood, right, found in crystal form in bone, and that makes it hard. So when we look at the skeleton, all right, what is the function of the skeleton? If we have a look over here, we're going to see, all right, that when we talk about bone, or it might help if I start with my pens, okay, when we look, we know the structure of bone is hard, all right? So because it's hard, right, what do we expect? Number one, if we have a look, we're going to look at all these, the skull, the rib cage, all right, my brain's inside there, there's my heart and my lungs. So we know it's going to protect, right, some of my organs, protection. Also, my posture. What do? Bones with the help of muscles, and we're going to look at that next week as well. What does it do? It helps with my support system. All right, so it protects, it supports, right, because you're going to find muscles are going to be attached, all right, to the bones because the bones can't move. The muscles are going to bring about, all right, all the different movements that you are going to be able to do. Okay, then again, when we look next week, when we look at the long bone, we're going to have a look inside there of the bone. It's called bone marrow, all right? And bone marrow actually produces blood cells. Okay, so bone has very important muscle attachment, as I said, it helps with the support. So when we're looking at our skeleton, all right, it's the hard part. It's bone tissue, all right? It's the part that's going to give us support. It's going to give us protection. It's going to allow us, with the help of muscles, to move, production of blood cells, etc. Okay, when we look at the skeleton, if you have a look over here, right, you know, as biologists, we like to do everything in different parts. When we look at the skeleton, we divide it into two parts, okay? Now, they are the axial and the appendicular. Now, just think of what the word says. Axial means the axis, the center, all right? What if I was standing, now remember when we talk about the skeleton, that is the anatomical position. Not this, this is the back of your hand, right? So when we're looking at the bones, our palms are held outwards like that, okay? So when we're looking at our skeleton, we have got a center part, literally in the center, right, running down here, and then we have what we call the appendicular, all right? Those of you, sometimes you've read things and it says appendix, all right? Not your appendix, appendix or annexure, all right? That means appendix, appendicular, something that's on the outside. For example, when they say Appendix E, those of you who do history or whatnot, it's references that are not part of your paper, they are separate, all right? And that's what our appendicular skeleton. We have the center part, and then we have got parts that we paste on the outside, if I can use the word paste, all right? We know it joins on the outside of that axial skeleton, all right? Center, axial, center, appendicular, attached on the outside. Okay, so let's go and look at specific parts. I hope you now, when I said axis, I purposely didn't want to say any names. I want you to start to get those names, all right, rolling. Okay, so we're going to start. Center, okay? Center, most important. Face. Let's start with the face. Right, now remember we are dealing, right, with bones. We are dealing with bones. So it's not the face, this is the skull, right? The skull. The skull is made up of, now if you have a look over here, you can see. Now next week, I battle a bit because normally when I teach, I always start off with the different kinds of bones first, right, and the structure of bones. But I know your syllabus is slightly different. When we look at the skull, all right, the skull has to, our brain, is of utmost importance to us, obviously, all right? So if we have a look at the skull encloses it and protects it totally, all right, totally. And I'm sure if you also feel, right, you'll see it's pretty smooth. Some of us have got funny bumps or whatnot, but it doesn't look like a 4x4 track, okay? They're what we call flat bones, right? So when we look at our skull, this is the whole thing. Now, we can actually divide the skull into two parts. I'm going to draw a little, all right, a little dot over there. Okay, because when we talk about the skull, this part over here, let me use another color. This part that houses the brain is actually what we call our cranium, all right? That's the cranium. This part over here, which makes up our face, is obviously the facial bones. All right. Now, all of these bones are separate, but you notice there are these lines. They are called sutures, and they are tough fibrous joints that join each of the bones of the cranium together. When we do joints next week, fibrous joints, don't move. You don't want your skull to be, have any weaknesses in it. Okay, so these are the bones of the cranium. These are the bones of the face. Now, when we label the bones of the cranium, I don't know how particular your teacher might be, but I'm quite particular in them saying the something bone. Because next year in grade 11, all right, no, actually in grade 12, all right, in grade 12, when you look at the nervous system, the brain, all right, the corresponding lobe of the brain is protected by the corresponding bone, right, of the skull. What do I mean? Okay, for example, here, this is my frontal lobe. My brain is my frontal lobe. But what protects my frontal lobe? All right, have a look here. My frontal bone. Okay, so the same part, the same name that we give to the lobe, all right, of our brain is the same name that we give to the bones of the cranium. Okay, so in front we have the frontal bone. Okay, parietal is on top. There's my parietal bone. That's the one over the back here. Occipital, that's our funny one at the back there. If you reach and you touch, it goes like a, can you see that? It's got a nice big dent over here. It goes in and it's got all these funny little, you'll see it's a lot more bumpy than the rest of, are you feeling there, Leni, or are you just stretching?
No, I'm stretching. I know what that looks like. I try to not pay attention to that.
That's all nice and bumpy, all right? Because you're going to see from here, nice and bumpy because muscles are going to attach to our head so that we can move it. That is called your occipital bone, all right? And right over here, these ones on the side, we refer to that, this is our temple, all right? And therefore we call it our temporal bone. All right, temporal bone. Then we've got the bones of our face, right? Bones of our face, you'll see we've got here, what of those? Those are your orbits, okay? Your eyes are protected. They've got bone all around it. Your eyes are very important. It's what you use to see. So again, your body's going to protect things that it deems important. So those are what you call your eye sockets, all right? Then you'll notice your nose has got a very small part, the nasal bone, only ends over here. The rest of your nose, can you remember when we did it in mammalian tissue, is made up of cartilage, okay? And then we've got the bones that make up our cheekbones. And I always say, You know, when you ladies do their makeup, they must so that their cheekbones go up. That's a nice long word. That is zygomatic. Okay, zygomatic bone. So next time when you're doing makeup, you can just pass a comment to your friend, oh, I've got such beautiful zygomatic bones, and they won't have a cooking clue what you're talking about. Okay? Then the two bones that form our upper jaw and our lower jaw. Top one can't move, right? That is called the maxilla. And the bottom one is the only movable bone, all right, on my skull, and that is called my mandible. All right? And as you can see, what are we going to see? Joined to the top, my maxilla, to the bottom of my mandible, I'm going to have teeth. Okay, now, when it comes to the skulls, later on, all right, at the end of the year, when you look at history of, I won't say human evolution, when you look at history of life on Earth, right, you're going to notice, what they're going to show you is that basically we're going to look at how in a way, how humans evolved, right? How humans evolved. So we have these certain species of characters going from, all right, the gorilla ape-like, then changing, all right, and becoming, don't become, but the change, then we see the more recent human skull. Okay, so what you need to become familiar with, all right, is diagrams like this. Diagrams like this. These are diagrams showing you a gorilla, all right? Again, we're looking at one part of the spectrum and the human on the other side. And just by looking at the skull, all right, you know, obviously we've just done the skull now, looking at the two of them, you will notice that there is a difference, okay? There is a lot of similarities as well. So where there's a lot of things that are similar, there are also a lot of things that are different. All right, so for example, what we're going to look at, you'll see here when I spoke about the frontal bone, all right, here, our brains get bigger, all right? We're starting here, then all of a sudden we've got a much bigger brain. And because of that, the bones need to be able to protect it. So a bigger brain, look at the frontal bone here, look at the frontal bone here by the gorilla. No frontal bone. And if we look at the frontal lobe of our brain, is our emotions, our wisdom, our intelligence, our consciousness, all right, be able to tell the difference between right and wrong. Basically, it's what our memories, it's what makes us human, right? And over there, as you can see, that doesn't quite, has a difference, right? They don't have those kind of qualities to a certain extent that we do. Also, have a look at the mandible. Okay, have a look at the mandible. Right, much smaller. In ours, much bigger. They chew a lot of raw fruit. Okay, so their jaws are bigger, they're stronger. Okay, are we, and I want to finish, almost finished. Okay.
Right.
Oh, yeah, see, Belinda talks to me, James doesn't talk to me. All right, now if we also have a look at the skull, when you turn the skull around, at the bottom of the skull, all right, is the opening where the vertebral column, all right, the spinal cord comes out and the vertebrae are going to attach. It's another difference that you need to be able to identify. This is a human, and this is what we call a quadruped. Somebody on all fours, a human is bipedal, okay? As soon as you walk upright, this foramen magnum, apologize. This foramen magnum moves towards the center, all right? Can you see when we stand upright, our spinal cord, all right, in the center of our body. Here, if you walk on fours, all right, what happens? Your this foramen magnum is towards the back. But you're going to be doing that a lot more when you do the history of life, but you need to know now that the skeleton ties up, all right, with when we look at the history of life, when we look at fossils, that evidence. The first one that I'm looking at here, be prepared to use x-rays. X-ray pictures are a really nice way in which we can use to answer questions. If you have a look at the question that I've asked here, I've said to you that diagram A, all right, and there's x-ray B of the leg. So this one I've said of the leg, This one, obviously, you can see is of the arm, all right, and you can see that it involves some kind of breaking, all right. But again, it's your knowledge of the skeletal system that's going to enable you to answer this question. First question, very simple. Name the bones labeled 1, 2, and 3. 1 is my clavicle, that's my shoulder bone. Number 2 I can see is my scapula. All right, now I said to you, remember, when we get to the leg, the bigger one, that's the shin, that's my table bone. So the thinner bone to the side is going to be my fibula. So just by noticing, if you know the skeleton, obviously an X-ray, right, is going to be just exactly the same. Name the bone that is broken in diagram A. Right, as I said to you, over here, we just need to know the bones of the arms. That is the humerus. And the bone broken here is going to be my fibula. Okay, going to be my fibula. Now, leading on to this, we can touch with biochemistry here as well. It says bones often break quite easily in older women due to the softening of bones. Name the disease responsible for this. We're going to look at it later, all right? It's called osteoporosis. That's in older women when all the calcium starts to move out of their bones and it makes the bones weaker. All right, so it says one precaution. What should you do? Go back to our biochemistry. What nutrient was needed, all right, to keep our bones healthy? Calcium. All right, calcium. So what do we need to do? Eat a lot more dairy. All right, eat a lot more dairy and green vegetables. Because green is gross. I'm not a great big fan of green veg. All right, so here we go. A simple an X-ray, right, gives you an idea of how we can ask a question. I'm going to this one over here. If you have a look, it's a table. We can also use this. It's about fractures. We can use a table. If you see the table is a nice idea, data response. Right, I can ask you certain questions from the table. I can also ask you to plot a graph. So if we have a look at the questions, all right, it says death can result from fractures if they are in the skull area or the ribs. Why is this? Okay, let's start off. Skull. What can the skull do? All right, it can damage the brain. So there we go. If the brain is damaged, fortunately we can die. In the ribs, what does the ribs protect? The lungs and the heart. All right, so if any of those are broken, they could pierce the lungs, they could pierce the heart, and obviously we could cause damage and people could die. Now, name the independent variable of this investigation. I could actually say that there are two, but remember, independent is always in your first column. Independent, I. What did I choose? I chose the age group. My dependent variable, did I have any control over the number of fractures? No, I didn't. Those are my results. Right, the number of fractures. Okay, and then you look at your data, the last question, and as I said, this is actually such a nice, easy question. Make two conclusions based on the data. So you look at this table, and looking at it, what do you notice? Okay, first of all, if I look here, I can say my first conclusion is that more males, all right, break their bones than females. Have a look, that's a general one. If you look at nearly almost all of the columns, all right, you will see. Another general comment that you could have is that there's lots that you could do. That ladies that are much older tend to break their bones more, right? Or you could say that boys, when they are teenagers and young, they tend to break their bones more. Right, so it says, look at the graph, tell you what kind of pattern can you see. The next question that those of you who have loaded the notes out, this is a nice kind of question that's going to tie back with the evolutionary. Because if you have a look over here, I'm going to just quickly skip. If if you have a look there, those are the bones, all right, of a human, a mole, a horse, a dolphin, and a bat. And if you notice, humerus, 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 humerus. Okay, and there we have humerus, ulnar and radius, ulnar radius. Okay, there's the humerus, ulnar, that's fused, ulnar radius. Okay, and what do we have again? The ulnar and the radius. Then we have wrist bones, wrist, wrist. Okay, almost fused, wrist bones, wrist bones. So what we're going to look at later on, you'll notice that certain organisms, their bone structure is the same.
I think it's time for a break now. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back from the break. Let's not waste any time and get straight back to today's revision lesson. Over to you.
The diagram in front over here should be a familiar diagram to you, all right? Because when we started with mammalian tissue, obviously one of the tissues that we looked at was bone. So the very first here, when I'll show you these diagram of the Haversian Systems, all right, of the bone that's made up in these concentric circles, lamella, all right, with the osteocytes, they should be familiar to you. So we know the structure of bone, okay? That is the microscopic structure. Now when we look at what the bone, the macroscopic, the large structure of the bone, we're going to look at what we call the structure of a long bone, okay? I'm going to put this diagram up on the board for you, but I'm now going to go across because we're actually going to look at the structure of the long bone. Right, for those of you, I'm going to obviously be using one that I got at our butcher, okay? But you guys, you can do it with a chicken bone. A chicken wing has got all of the mammalian tissue. And those of you, when you order the drumstick, all right, that is what you're looking at. You're going to look at the long bone. But I'm going to go across here. Our cameras are not movable today because most of our cameramen are out on a shoot. So I want to be able to explain to you. Okay, if we have a look over here, we're looking at the structure of a long bone. All right, this is the outside portion. And the reason that it's called a long bone, it sounds rather stupid, and I'm going to put this one here, is because it's long. All right? It's long. So when we talk about a long bone, we are talking about your humerus, we're talking about your ulna, your radius, your femur, your fibula, and your tibia. Now, when we look at the structure of the long bone, there's two things that are very apparent. Number one, here is this round portion at the end. If I show this bone in front of you over there, all right, you will see, have a look, we have this large round portion at the end. And then we have this long portion going from that. Have a look here, all right? So we've got round over here, we've got this round portion, and then we've got this long portion. Okay, they are called, this is the head, but we refer to it as the epiphysis. The epiphysis is the round. This long portion from here to here is the shaft. That is called the diaphysis. Okay? So we have the head and we have the shaft. Now, if we have a look at the head, all right, if we look on the outside, we're going to see, and as I said, next time play around with your chicken bone. You're going to see this white, all right, shiny, smooth tissue that is going to be your hyaline cartilage. Now remember, as I said to you, bones are going to join to other bones. So when they move across each other, you want the movement to be smooth. So we have this articulating cartilage on the outside at the ends of our heads. of our epiphysis. If you see here, this side's not as clear because we've got a lot of muscle attachment there, because a lot of the muscles attach, all right, their origin is at the heads of the bones. Now if I turn it inwards, right, now we see something totally different, okay? When we look at bone, we are going to notice the following. If I move this one, there we go. We are going to see different types of bone in our long bone. Now, this over here is the shaft, as I said, and this is made up of compact bone. In other words, the bone, the osteons, are very, very, very close together. It's very, very hard. And we would want that because our shaft, that's where all our weight, all right? That's our weight-bearing part of the bone, okay? So the bone here is much stronger. At the ends, in our heads, we have spongy bone. Now I'm going to bring this one a little bit closer because you can see, look at all the holes, all right? Look at all the holes. We can see spongy bone much clearer, all right, over there. It's far more porous. It's almost, as I said, it's got far more holes in it, and it's not as, all right, strong as my compact bone, okay? Then if you look carefully over here, you will see that there is a very visible line, okay? That is called the epiphyseal plate. And it's in this section over here that you're going to have cells that are able to divide by mitosis, all right, enabling bone to grow. So in other words, all right, this is your growth plate. So when you grow in length, the cells divide in this region, causing the bones to elongate. Okay, now the inside of the bone. And if I can slowly, let me use this over here. You can see I can start, all right, to clear all of that out. Okay, it's not actually hollow. What I am clearing out now, all right, and if you can remember when we looked at the skeleton, one of the functions of bone is to produce blood cells, all right? And what I'm actually clearing now, all right, is bone marrow, okay? All of that, we can hollow it out, and as you can see over there, all right, all of that coming out is bone marrow. And that bone marrow is obviously responsible for the production of our red and our white blood cells, specifically our white blood cells here and our red blood cells in the head. Okay, so what you need to remember, epiphysis, head, diaphysis, shaft, right? Epiphyseal plate, this is the bone marrow cavity. Now we can't see it, right? But surrounding, if I were to scratch on it, there's a layer of connective tissue surrounding the bone, and that is called the periosteum. Os meaning bone. All right, so and on the outside over here, this nice white smooth, that is the hyaline cartilage, the articulating cartilage. You can't see it too clearly, but I'm going to, let me get into view. This little piece over here is what's left of a ligament, because a ligament is going to join another bone to each other. If I combine this man over here, I can ask you questions on bones of the skeleton. I can ask you on muscles, antagonistic muscles, and I can ask you on joints, right? So we combine all of our sections together and we can bring up the questions. Let's have a look here. The diagram below shows the legs of an athlete while he's waiting for a race to start. The letters A to F show some muscles as well as joints that will be used during the race. Okay. When the starter's gun is fired, the athlete's right leg will straighten, pushing the athlete upwards and forwards. Which of the letters A to F indicate muscles that will relax? Okay, he's standing like this. This is the right leg. And he's going to stand up. So when he stands up, what muscle contracts? This one, all right? Because this one is the one that's keeping him down. So he needs to, or am I incorrect? All right, let's have a look. On your marks, all right, if you go down like this, this is contracted, this is relaxed. When I stand, how do I straighten my leg? Yes, over here, this muscle is going to contract and this muscle is going to relax. So, and don't be shy in the exams to do it. I don't know why it says a 3 here. Should just be 1. Okay, so what relaxes? Relaxes, we are going to have number C, right? And contract, we're going to have number, let's see, which one was it? Number B. All right, so relax, number C, contract, oopsie, number B. We're not finished. Have a look over here. All right, when you're going down and you get up, right, you strengthen like this. Think about here, your calf, right, your calf muscle. If you almost as if you're standing on toes, getting ready, what's going to contract? E is going to contract, it's your calf getting ready, and F is going to relax. Remember, they are antagonistic muscles. They cannot do the same thing at the same time. So if the one is contracted, the other one must relax, and vice versa. Okay, I just want to show you the different things. Okay, here, what have we got? You need to show, where's a hinge joint? Let's go back to the diagram. Hinge, all right, and ball and socket. Ball and socket, number A, the femur fits into, all right, the hip, and where is my hinge joint? Number D, my knee is my hinge joint. Right, you see all of them coming together. Right, during the race, the athlete suffered injury to his right knee, resulting in torn ligaments. As a result, he was not allowed to participate in competition for 6 weeks. During this time, he was only paid 1/3 of his monthly income. What are ligaments? They're connective tissue. All right, and what do? Join bone to bone. Okay, now, this is a nice question. All right, do you think that athletes who are unable to take part in competitions due to injury should be entitled to their full income? It's your opinion. Yes or no? Right, just make sure you have the right question. Do I have to go over the challenge question, hey, before we end? All right, guys, have a look here. All right, go and have a look on the notes at the different questions. Here, again, showing you bones, asking you which one is broken. Okay, again. Okay, older woman, an osteoporosis question. All right, if we have a look at the next one, it's a synovial joint. It's asking you again what kind of diagram. There we go. We can see that it is the hip joint. Okay, and again, asking questions on that.
We've come to the end of today's show. Thanks for joining me and for chatting to me during the show. Remember to visit our website, learn.mindset.co.za, to get the notes and to watch the videos from the term. Goodbye.